Greetings, friends, jewelers, fellow entrepreneurs. Jim Ackerman here, and this is the March 2024 marketing meeting for members of JEMS, and we've opened this particular one up to quote-unquote outsiders because, frankly, we think it's so important to the prosperity of your businesses to not continue to suffer from the myths of marketing that cost so much money and deliver so little results. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I do want to show you a couple of things before I get started, just for grins. So I got to do the screen share here and open up a couple of things down here. One of the things that that you guys have been having to think about, at least I would think, and hope that you would be thinking about this, is the price of gold. And a lot of you guys are looking to take advantage of that. And so I thought I'd show you a couple of efforts that have been made by clients in the past with some good success. What are you seeing there, Paul? Can you see the postcard for the Golden Times?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a very simple postcard, and this we actually started with Bill Warren 24 years ago. He's not using it currently, and I don't exactly know why, because I saw his latest effort and I thought it was relatively weak. But this is just kind of a mini newsletter put onto a standard 3x5-ish type postcard. Goes out. You can see down at the bottom here, local residential customer. You can do this every door, direct mail, extremely cheap to do this kind of a thing. We'd have to update the graphics, of course, to reflect the current the current price of gold and that kind of thing. You look at that and say, wow, that's a lot of copy, but it gives people reason to, it gives them a rationale. And that's one of the things that you're going to hear me talk about today a little bit is, telling people a little bit more, a little bit less in the, rather than a little bit less in the context of keeping things simple. In other words, simple for the consumer to figure things out and not have to think on their own to determine the implications. So that's one of the efforts that we've used for gold buying in the past. I'm going to close that one out and show you the other one. So now can you see the largest buying event of the year, April 12th and 13th? See that one? Okay. Is it big enough that you guys can, is that a little better?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, a couple of things on this one. This one was also very successful, and there's a couple of reasons for it. Number one, the photograph with the testimonial inside. This is not actually a picture of the actual lady, but the comment that she puts in there is her actual comment from Eleanor. I set up my private appointment with Mr. Harris and brought in anything I was no longer wearing. He sorted through and found value in items I didn't even know were real. I walked away with a check for $21,334.15.
Could that reach out to the Grand Lodge of Washington?
Is that somebody talking to me or somebody talking? I think that's Stuart talking to somebody else. I could be wrong about it. I'm going to go ahead and mute him for the sake of that. So the power in this particular thing is the example. And we've used this over and over again with television ads, with I think with radio ads, certainly with print ads, and with direct mail, where we put one or more testimonials of people who've gotten checks, or we've shown actual checks with the names blotted, fuzzed out, blurred out, so that you could see this person got a check, this person got a check, this person got a check, those kinds of things. And it's the specificity of these stories that are the driver of the selling. It's one thing to say, bring your unwanted gold in and we'll see how much it's worth. But when people can see, hey, so-and-so came in and got a check for X, so-and-so came in and got a check for Y, so-and-so came in and got a check for Z, that really brings it home to people. And it's that kind of specificity that is very powerful and ups the response rate often dramatically. Okay, so I wanted to show you those two just for the sake of the timing. And then one other thing I wanted to show you is for those of you who are aware of our Easter egg extravaganza. This is the postcard that Kmart Jewelers is using, although we have an updated version with photographs of the prizes and those kinds of things that are being done right now. But this extravaganza has been a powerful event for several jewelers. I think Kevin Patton, who I would expect to be on the call at some point in time today. This is his third year doing it. I thought it was only his second, but he's been doing it for 3 years. Bill Warren's been doing it for something like 16 years. And the cool part about it is it's pretty predictable. In other words, Bill will spend about $5,000 promoting this every year, and it will typically generate anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 in sales over about a 2-week period of time. So I wanted you guys to just see that to know what kind of capabilities are there. And you'll notice once again down here on what I call the message side of the card. Some people call the picture side up here the front side of the card, and this the back side of the card. There's no front and back in direct mail, right? Because you don't know what's going to come out on, which side is going to come out and be seen first, because the postman doesn't deliver them in an order. They don't take time at the post office to figure out, oh, this one has to be seen first, so it has to come out of the mailbox with this side up. Now, the post office doesn't do that. You're lucky if they get it there, right, Eric?
Correct.
So, nevertheless, we have a whole motif that follows this design pattern for in-store signage and posters and banners and email banners and everything else that goes along with it. So. And we've got like 6 different designs, or I think it might be 9 different designs for people to choose from. So anyway, that's been a very powerful thing. It's a free gift with no requirement to buy anything. You come in for the 2 weeks ahead of Easter, and you can pull a Easter egg, plastic Easter egg out of a basket, whatever is in that prize. Everybody wins a prize. And whatever is in that egg is what you get. And he's got prizes. In this particular case, his prize is up to about $3,500 for the grand prize. Kevin's got one at about $8,500, if I remember correctly, for his grand prize, and all kinds of much less expensive things up to there, including Starbucks certificates for $5 and whatever. So. Just wanted you guys to be aware of that in case you're looking for some promotional stuff that we can help you with along those lines. Okay, stop
Jim,
sharing for a minute here.
Jim, I have a question on that last program.
Yeah, please go ahead, Eric.
You had said the investment was about $5,000 for the program. Does that include the giveaways?
Yeah, I
Or is
believe.
that okay?
Well,
versus
no,
just
no,
getting
no.
marketing.
No, it would not include the giveaways.
Okay.
Obviously, he's spending around. The 5,000 is roughly what's being spent on the marketing, the advertising, right? The direct mail. If he does radio, it's whatever media he uses. And then but the prizes, Eric, are these are free giveaways, right? So the prizes, for example, the Starbucks certificates or whatever the equivalent is, restaurant certificates, often those can be had at anywhere from free to half price. Okay. In addition to that, the jewelry that he gives away is usually dated stuff that may have been hanging around for a year or two. And he's obviously giving it away as a prize, but he hasn't been able to sell it anyway, and it's not one of those things that people will complain about because, hey, they're getting it for free, right? So, okay, all right, appreciate that question. All right, what we're talking about today is vitally important stuff, guys, because there is simply a lot of myths that go on out there that cost jewelers a tremendous amount of money because, frankly, they're wrong. It's as simple as that. They are either totally wrong or they are partially right and used almost exclusively wrong. And that costs a tremendous amount of money. So Eric did an event last year. Was that your anniversary event last year, Eric? Is that when we did that, or was that the year before?
Would have been the year before. No, it was 2022 that we did that.
Yeah, okay. And I can't remember all the numbers exactly, but one of the big myths is the myth of what media works well and what media doesn't work well. That's just one of the myths that we've been talking about. There's the myth of branding versus direct response marketing, the idea being brand first, then sell. I can't describe how frustrating it is to hear people talk about build your brand, build your brand, build your brand all over the place. Guys, I hate to tell you this. Most jewelers don't have a brand. And they're doing just fine without it to a large degree. All right, I'm going to go into that in more detail. The reach versus frequency conundrum, okay? Which is most important, reach or frequency? We'll go into that in the context of the fallacy of frequency. For example, people tell you they've got to see your ad 3 times or 5 times or 7, or I've heard up to 13 times before it sinks in. I'm going to go through that fallacy. The kiss myth, you've heard of that, right? Keep it simple, stupid. The problem is, what is really simple? I'm going to go into that. The social media / digital media supremacy myth. If it's so good, why are results so questionable relative to those things? The direct response myth. In other words, some people think it's gauche to ask people to buy in your advertising. That's a myth. We're going to talk into that. We're going to talk about that. And then there's the attention span myth, right? How often have you been told that the American public has no attention span? Your customer's attention span is that of a spider, I've heard that said, or a fish, a goldfish, that kind of thing. Well, if that was true, you couldn't drive, right? If you didn't have an attention span, you couldn't drive. My wife and I went to the movies last night. We watched the episodes 7 and 8 of The Chosen season 4. Roughly 2 hours. Didn't have any trouble paying attention for 2 hours. We didn't fall asleep. We didn't check our phones, all that kind of thing. We clearly have an attention span. I don't know if any of you read books, but if you do, most books take longer than 30 seconds to get through. So
try a 1,000-page Tom Clancy novel. They sell like hotcakes.
That's exactly right? He sells millions of these things, right? So that's the one I wanted to start with, is the attention span myth and what implications it has for your advertising. For example, a lot of the broadcast media folks are selling 15-second spots these days, 10-second spots even. 10 and 15-second spots. And the argument is it's better to show a lot of these short spots than it is to show fewer longer spots. All right. And that's true of radio and television. It's also true of video on, for example, YouTube or wherever you put it. There's this myth out there that says shorter is better. And yet we have evidence that continues to to demonstrate that the opposite is actually true, that longer is actually better. I have sons that produce videos for YouTube specifically. And you guys may have seen some of these videos, to be honest with you. One is called Girls Don't Poop. If you ever seen that one, it's for a product called Poopery. And it's something that goes in your toilet that keeps the stink out. Okay.
That's the one with the redhead, right?
That's the one with the redhead. That's exactly right. Well, it's like a 4-minute commercial. And it sold like crazy. It 10 times the revenue of the company. Okay. They did another one called How to Cure Bad Breath for a company. What was the name of that product, Paul?
Aura Brush.
Aura Brush. That's exactly right. That company launched with nothing and went to be on to become a $5 million company on the strength of that 3 or 4 minute commercial. And they've done it for Pizza Hut, and they've done it for Red Bull, and they've done it for Dollar Beard Club, and on it goes. They've racked up over 1 billion YouTube views. But the key thing about it is it's not just the views that counts, it's the sales that come along with it. And they've proven time and time again that longer actually sells better than shorter. So once again, apparently, the American public does have an attention span. The question is what keeps their attention as opposed to what and why they will dismiss an ad. Okay. Has anybody got any input on why you think people tune out ads?
They're boring.
They're boring. That's right. And the definition of boring is if there's not something in it for me, right? And we've talked about this before, guys. You know this. If I bought an engagement ring last week and I see an ad for an engagement ring, whether in any medium, it doesn't matter what medium it is, but if I see an ad for engagement jewelry after I've already bought an engagement ring, how interested am I in that ad? And the answer is only to the extent that if it's within that short time frame before I've actually given, popped the question and given her that engagement ring. The only interest I have in any follow-up advertising relative to engagement rings is, did I make a good deal? Could I have gotten a better deal if I'd have held off, or if I'd gone to this guy or that, or whatever it happens to be? But once I give that ring to that girl, I assume girl these days, but once I've given that ring, do I have any reason to be interested in any advertising related to engagement jewelry at that point in time? I don't. So I simply dismiss it. There's a thing in your brain called the reticular activator, and it tells you what to pay attention to and what to not to pay attention to. If my water heater went out last week and then I see an ad for water heaters, I'm intently interested for that period of time because I need a water heater. But any ads I saw before the water heater went out, probably not interested in. And certainly once I've replaced the water heater, I'm even less interested because I'm confident it's going to last for a while, right? So the level of interest at some level has to do with timing more than anything else. But the other thing is there a benefit for me? Do I see value in it? Okay. Paul, you're aware of the life cycle of somebody who's in the market for an engagement ring. Is it 4 or 6 months, or what's that cycle, that buy cycle?
Oh, that came out in a survey from the Knot. A typical, I'm doing this off the top of my head. A typical groom will start shopping about 3 months before he pops the question. He will take his sweetheart to a maximum of 3 stores.
Yeah. And of course, these are generalities based on some kind of research that was done by the Knot. But nevertheless, that's your window if you're focusing on engagement jewelry specifically, right? So you got to keep those kinds of things in mind. There is a buy cycle. People come into and out of that buy cycle, and during the time that they're in it, they're going to be paying attention. When they're not in it, they're not going to be paying attention. It's as simple as that. Why? Because during the time that they're in the window, they perceive a reason to be interested. In other words, there's something in it for them. And when you're talking about a purchase that's going to cost somebody $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 or more, they probably want more information rather than less information. And that's one of the reasons why longer works better than shorter. Okay, so that brings me to the KISS myth. All right, keep it simple, stupid. What it really means to keep it simple. All right. And that goes to this idea of being straightforward and clear. All right. Straightforward meaning there's a lot of advertising people that focus on the cute, the clever, and the so-called creative. Now, I'm not telling you that can never work. Okay. It rarely does. Sometimes it does, but it's really kind of a challenge to keep it working. And let me give you some examples that you can surely relate to, okay? How many of you guys are familiar with Flow?
Familiar with what?
Insurance. Progressive Insurance.
Oh, I can't
Flo.
stand Flo. She makes me crazy.
How about the Geico Lizard?
Just as bad.
Just as bad.
And
Now
the caveman was even worse.
the caveman, yeah. And now we've added to that Liberty Mutual, right? And there's two versions of Liberty Mutual. One's with Doug and the emu. And then the other one is the ones where I think it's Liberty Mutual, where they're standing in front of the Statue of Liberty and they've got various things going on. Look, when those ads first came out, I was kind of intrigued by them. I thought there was humor in them. I would even laugh at them. And the problem is you have to, if you're going to go with funny, and there's all kinds of agencies out there who will use the slogan, funny is money. The research does not bear that out. And the challenge is, how do you stay funny? In other words, the first time I see a funny ad in any medium, I might laugh. I might laugh uproariously if it's a really funny ad, right? The second time I might laugh. The third time I might chuckle. The fourth time I might smile. The fifth time I'm starting to get annoyed, right? And one of the challenges is sometimes they'll play these ads 3 or 4 times within one 30-minute or hour-long television program. So by the time I get through with one television program, I've had it. I get the joke. It was funny, terrific. What's in it for me? Okay. Now, again, I'm not saying funny doesn't work. They've been running the Geico thing for decades. They've been running some of these others for years and years and years. But they rely on double entendre. They rely on humor. What if you don't get the humor? What if you don't get the joke? What if you don't think it's funny? What's your reaction when any of those things happen? And does that contribute to the so-called brand? All right. And we've got a guy in town here in Salt Lake City who doesn't really try to be funny with his advertising. Actually, most of his advertising is pretty good, except for his slogan at the end. And that one is,
Well, yeah, it contributes.
you're breaking up, Paul. You're breaking up. Paul, you're breaking up and breaking up badly. So I can't, but it's it's the computer company. You know which one I'm talking about? Anyway, yeah, at any rate, there's my point, right? At the end of his ads, he always says, "We love you." I don't believe that. He doesn't know me, and he destroys all of his credibility. Other than that, he's got great advertising. He talks about a terrific guarantee. He talks about how his computers compare to the other guy's computers. They're really good advertising until he says oh geez, I wish I could remember the name of the company right now. I'm having one of those senior moments. But his last comment is, at such and such computers, we love you. Don't buy it. You might like me. You might like my business. You might value me as a customer or a client, but you don't love me. You don't even know me. And that kind of stuff just turns people off because it's not credible. Okay. So for the sake of simplicity, you make sure that you are clear in your messaging. And again, if you're doing your own advertising, you might be a closet stand-up comic, but I would encourage you not, to shelve that for, open mic night at the local comedy club and not use it in your advertising. Too much pressure to continue to be funny once you've tried to be funny. Too much pressure on the customer or the prospective customer to be able to understand any double entendre that you might use. We have a ski area here in Utah called Brighton. They used to do billboards that were the word puzzles, like the fascination word puzzles. And I'm a man of reasonable intelligence, but it was right on my way to work every day. And I drive by that billboard every single day, and I couldn't figure out the word puzzle. And it pissed me off, Yeah, I mean, and every day that stupid billboard reminded me how stupid I was. And for years, I refused to ski there. And I'd still refuse to ski there, except my kids go there. So, and they do have night skiing, so, right? So so if I ski, I go there, and that's the reason I go there, is because of the night skiing and my kids go there, not because, and this is years later, they abandoned the campaign long ago, and I'm still pissed about it, right? So make sure you're simple, make sure you're clear, and simplicity may mean going longer rather than shorter. Okay. It may mean you need to have more copy, not less copy. And once again, I'll give you an example. If you say, come in and buy your Christmas, take care of your Christmas jewelry giving at Eric J. Locke Jewelers, and you get 15% off everything, anything you want. Is that clear? Yes. Is it concise? Yes. But is it clear enough in that? Does the customer know, what kinds of things have to go through the mind of the customer? Well, yeah, 15% off. Well, that's great, but how much am I going to have to spend anyway? And what would I get for the 15% off? So how do we deal that in the spirit of keeping things simple and clear? Okay. What we do is give examples to stimulate the thinking and give people a sense of, hey, here's a $500 item, you get 15% off, it's only $425. Okay. They don't have to think anymore. I can see this is an item. I like the looks of it. It's normally $500. I can buy it for $425. You might even add in a line that says save $75. You've eliminated their need to think. You've made their life simple and easy. Okay. And if you can do those things, you will, you'll see the responses go up in your advertising, sometimes dramatically. Hadley Perry calls this the secret sauce, right? When we started working with Hadley, you guys know the story. She was about a little less than a $4 million operation. Now she's over a $10 million operation. And she noticed a dramatic increase in response to her advertising when she would start to put 3 to 5 examples in the ads. Now, 3 to 5 examples is going to make it longer, right? But she would give these specific examples and she would give specific pricing on these things so that people knew, oh, several things go on in their brains. Oh, I see. Yeah, look, I could get a bracelet, or I could get earrings, or I could get a pendant, or I could get a ring, or whatever it happens to be. It gives them ideas. It sparks the imagination. And then there is a sense of how much it would cost me to do this, that, and the other thing. And it makes their life so much easier. They don't have to use their imagination, right? They don't have to think it through. It just becomes a lot easier for them to say, well, I didn't see any of these that make sense, but at the end of that, we typically put, of course, these are just a few examples, but we have dozens more that can fit your budget and needs, right? And that kind of a line is always in there in the advertising as well. This is what I mean by the keep it simple, stupid idea. But you've got to keep it simple from the customer's point of view, not your point of view. And it is keep it simple, stupid, not keep it short, stupid, okay? Remember, longer almost always sells better than shorter. Not always, but almost always. And guys, I got to tell you this. This is as much a surprise to me as it is to anybody. But we continue to go through this and test things over and over and over again, and we will continue to test it. Because I'm not trying to sit in an ivory tower and tell you this is the way to do it. I frankly get sucked into some of these arguments myself on a fairly regular basis, right? Well, it should be, people don't have the attention span that they used to and all that kind of thing. And we will keep trying things. Eric and I are working on his Antwerp promotion right now, and we've talked about doing a split run on the direct mail stuff. Right? So half the list will get a postcard that will be shorter and quote unquote simpler. Half the list will get the longer 2-page sales letter that we've talked about in the past. And we're going to see which one pulls best. Okay. Obviously, if you can get a postcard to work, it's a lot less expensive than taking a 2-page sales letter, putting it in an envelope, having to put a stamp on it, and all that kind of stuff. So, if you can make that shorter one work, great. But you've got to test and track in order to determine these things rather than just go with any platitude that's just spouted off by somebody out there in the world of advertising. Which brings me to one of the other things that I talked about. Why do these myths persist? Why do these fallacies persist? Okay, for example, the reach versus frequency conundrum, where they're telling you, hey, you've got to run your ad. People have got to see your ad 3 times or 5 times or 7 times or 13 times before it actually sinks in. Why do you get that argument? Well, let's think about who's making the argument. The media companies. How do they get paid? Well, most of them, not all of them, but most of them get paid by the number of commercials or advertisements you run, right? The whole top of mind awareness thing that the newspapers came up with a half a century ago or more, that whole thing was designed to level out and increase the amount of money that the newspapers made, whether it worked for you or not. Were you guys, did you guys get sucked into this where they came by and said, hey, look, we understand that you can't afford a big full-page ad all the time. So look, just put a business card size ad in there, but have it in every day or have it in 3 days a week or something along that. Eric, I saw you shook your head a little bit. John, did you get sucked into that at all? No, you didn't get sucked. How about you, Stuart? I can't see whether your head's shaking or not. So, but the point of the matter is that was a huge thing for the newspaper business. Well, the fact of the matter is almost none of those ads work. You can't take an ad like this on a page this big and expect it to be seen very well. And it doesn't matter how frequently you put something like that in, it doesn't have an offer associated. It didn't have enough benefits or distinctive feature statements that drew a difference between you and the competition for that to be helpful. But why did they do it? Well, because in the old days, in the way old days prior to this top of mind awareness thing, the newspapers would get spikes in their advertising. Around Christmas time, they sold lots of ads and big ads, but a lot of the year they didn't have anything going like that. So they needed to level out their income and make it easier, quote unquote, easier for smaller businesses to advertise. So they came up with that funky idea of top of mind awareness, and everybody bought into it. The radio people bought into it. Why? Because, hey, it's better to have you run 200 spots than 100 spots, or 100 spots than 50 spots. At least for them, it was better, right? But did it work for you, the business person? Well, it depends on whether it worked at all or not. But I can tell you this, typically speaking, and I've got experience to back this up, and I'll tell you a story about it in a minute. But typically speaking, it will work right away if it's going to work at all. Okay, I'll give you two examples, as a matter of fact, not in the jewelry world, but the jewelry world, I've got examples there too. But I want to give you the breadth of this, because so you understand that these are universal principles that work across the board. Okay, had a real estate guy who's spending $1,000 a week in a relatively small town in Canada. He was in Canada. He's running $1,000 a week ad. Okay, he wasn't getting, and he'd run it for about 4 weeks, and it wasn't bringing in any results. So he asked the newspaper guy, I've been running this ad for 4 weeks. I don't know if I want to keep running it. It's not working. What do you think the newspaper guy said? This is where you guys can pipe up.
Top of mind awareness.
Right. You haven't run it enough. Keep running it. So he goes for 6 more weeks. So now he's into this 10 weeks, plus the cost of putting the ad together, right? Which was an agency job. I think they charged him $1,200 to put the ad together at the time. All right, so he's into this ad for 11.5, and he was getting next to nothing for response, 2 or 3 responses a week, right? So then they asked me to look at the ad. So I looked at the ad, and I thought, actually, this is a pretty good ad. And I looked at it and looked at it, and finally I figured out what I thought was the problem with it. I changed 2 words in the headline. 2 words. The very next time they ran the ad, responses went up by 1,000%, a 10 times increase for a 2-word change in the headline. And every time they ran it after that, the response was 10 times what they'd been getting before. They'd been getting 3 or 4 responses. They were now getting 30 or 40 responses every time they ran that ad. Okay. So much for the idea that if you run it more, you will get an increase in response. I mean, they don't say, oh, you got to run it 10 weeks and then suddenly it'll click in and start getting an exponentially higher number of responses. They don't say that. They say the response will grow over time. And that is typically not what happens. I'll give you another example in the world of infomercials. I once did an infomercial for a guy who was running, his name was Bob Mans, and it was Bob Mans Automatic Golf. He was selling videotapes on how to swing a golf club for an improved performance. And he was doing okay. He was running these infomercials for years at about break even. The only reason he continued to do it at break even was because he was selling on the back end to the people who bought the tapes. He was selling custom golf clubs, and that's where he was making his money. But he had me come in and take a look at the infomercial and see if I could improve it. Okay. Well, I did make some changes to the infomercial. The very next week he went out, sales increased by 250%. The very next week. Okay. And then you've got the case of Hadley Perry and Kevin and other jewelers that have run stuff and seen dramatic increases. Like I said, Hadley started putting examples into her ads, a little bit longer copy. Instead of sending out postcards, we started sending out letters. The increases were dramatic, and she's grown from 4 million over 10 million over a 5-7 year period of time, something like that. Okay. So, and these things happen literally overnight. Had a jeweler in Troy, Ohio. Okay, some of you might know Bonnie Fry. It's Harris Jeweler. I showed an example of her gold buying ad early on in the webinar. All right. She came in, exactly the same thing happened. We put together a promotion for her estate buying event, and sales went through the roof. Now, she actually bought one week, and then the next week we did an estate selling event. Basically, the idea being, bought too much, now I've got to liquidate a bunch of stuff. And she did $119,000 in one weekend, you know, a 3-day period of time. So these things can happen. They can happen immediately. And this is where we come back to that reach versus frequency thing. All right. If it's going to work, it's going to work immediately. The case for frequency is when you find something that does work, keep doing it. Okay. So, you know, Bill Warren's Extravaganza event, he's been doing it for 16 years. His Black Friday event, he's been doing for 20 some years. Hadley Perry's Golden Opportunity Sale, they've been doing that for well over 20 years. Their customer appreciation event, they've been doing for well over 20 years. The appeals for these things, the advertising itself does not change very much. It doesn't have to. Okay, because they've got something that works, they keep doing it. Now, we make changes from time to time that are relatively minor. We try to improve a headline, we try to improve graphics, but we're careful about those things. The key messaging does not change. All right. Now, once you've got something that works, you test on a small basis. You don't go out and say, oh, you know, all right, we're going to send out 15,000 catalogs. Okay, if you've never done a catalog before, that would be foolish. Okay, that's going high on reach, and you don't have any frequency, but you also don't have any track record, right? So what you want to do is you want to start small. Okay, we're going to send out 3,000 catalogs, or 5,000, or maybe 2,500 catalogs. And we're going to track and see how it works. And if it does work well, great. We'll then expand our reach. We'll go to more people with something we've already proven that works. But if it hasn't worked or it doesn't work, don't do it again without some kind of major change, right? And if it doesn't work at all, then maybe you ought to shelve it. If it's close to making money, then maybe you can make changes to it and improve it enough to make it go. But you would go out with a second test, again to a relatively smaller group, and find out, can we make this work? If we can make it work, okay, then we'll expand it, okay? Same thing is true with, like, for example, the broadcast media. Television's difficult to make work. Radio's difficult to make work, but not impossible. And if you can test, if you understand the idea that if you make a direct response offer, a strong offer that people would respond to, then you've got a chance to make it work. If it does work, you can expand it. If it doesn't work, stop doing it. It's as simple as that. I helped a client save $100,000 a year by simply eliminating the stuff that wasn't working. Once we started tracking and found out what was not working, we cut that stuff from the budget altogether. And it saved him $100,000 a year which was, I think, 70% or 73% of his ad budget. We simply eliminated it, and sales went up by 28% because we took some of that money and put it into the things that were working, increased the budget for the things that were working. That's the way you should approach your marketing. Hold it accountable like you would hold a salesperson accountable, right? If a salesperson doesn't meet quota month after month after month, you get rid of them. Well, advertising should be the same way. If it isn't working, stop doing it and do something else. I'm not saying you don't, right? If you have a salesperson that you have to get rid of because they're not performing, what do? You typically bring a replacement in. And if that person does well, great. If they don't do well, then you get rid of them and try something else. Well, advertising is your salesperson. They're out there trying to generate traffic for you, right? And so that's what you should consider. All right. So by way of review on the reach and frequency myths, okay, you go for reach and frequency only once you have proven successful offers and ads, okay? And then if it isn't working, you go for less reach and less frequency until you find the stuff that does work. Then you can expand from there, okay? And if it was me, if I found something that worked, I would probably increase reach rather than frequency in the early stages. Okay, I'd want to go to more people rather than going to the same people with the same offer with greater frequency. Now, that's not to say the same offer to the same people can't work. It can, because of the issue of timing, right? You have a solid offer that is targeted to the right audience. There will still be people that move into and move out of that buying window at any given point in time. So going to those same people, it's been proven you can go to those same people 3 or 4 different times with the exact same ad and offer, and you won't see a diminishment of the results or an appreciable diminishment of the results. But nevertheless, if I'm you and I find something that works, I'm going to expand my reach first and then worry about the frequency. All right. So we've covered reach and frequency. We've covered KISS. I want to go, and we've covered attention span. I want to go in the time that we've got left to the direct response myth. It's gauche to ask people to buy. And I want to combine that with the branding myth, which says brand first, then sell. Okay. And boy, have I heard this from all kinds of people. Look, question for you to consider. What is a brand? What is a brand, and do you have one? I would contend that brand is nothing more than having a huge collection of happy buying and repeat buying customers, okay? When you have that, you have a brand. The ad agency people will come up with all kinds of funky definitions for it, and frankly, I've never been able to understand any of them very well. They'll talk about what your store looks like. They'll talk about what the experience of being in your store is like. And there's some truth to that, by the way. There's some truth to both of those things. They'll talk about your logo and your corporate identity. They'll talk about consistency in the look of all of your ads. And there's truth to all of that, okay? The problem is if you're not asking people to take the specific next step in the buying process, you are wasting money. If you are a huge corporation, you might have enough money that you can do that, okay? But building brand that way takes a long period of time and a huge amount of money, okay? And
well,
if
the other reason the great big corporations do it, like Budweiser and Procter and Gamble or whatever, is because they don't control point of sale.
Through that. Okay,
it's very hard for them to make specific and compelling offers. All they can do is beat their audience over the head with we're the best, we're the best, we're the best.
Well, and what they have too is ubiquitous distribution, right? So
true,
you can go into any convenience store on the corner and get a 6-pack of Bud. You can go into any grocery store and get a 6-pack of Bud, right? Yeah, there's any number of businesses that have massive distribution. You guys know this because you all have co-op programs, right? And think about the ads that your suppliers offer you if they do it all. If they have a co-op program, who is being advertised in that co-op program? John, is it primarily your store or is it primarily the brand?
It's the supplier.
It's the supplier, right? It's this, you see that big Hearts on Fire logo on the billboard, and your little thing is down there in the corner right. Your logo's down in the corner right. And they're happy to pay for that. And frankly, they hope that people will come to your store, but they don't really care. They're happy to have them go to the other Hearts on Fire dealer in your town, if there is one, or wherever they happen to be. That contributes to their so-called brand. And we could go into whether that's a good use of their money or not as well. But what does it do for you? Right? And so you gotta be cognizant of the fact that the best way to build brand is to have a ton of sales. Now, here's the interesting part about that. When you do that, when you focus on direct response, I'm going to use Hadley Perry as an example, okay? But there are many others, but she's the best example that I know of, okay? Going from 4 million, under 4 million to over 10 million in that short period of time. And we did exclusively direct response advertising, whether it was television. She's never used radio much. Occasionally for buying office only, she uses newspaper. But for all of her events, she does 12 to 15 events a year. It's all direct response stuff. Most of the events carry forward year after year after year after year. There is consistency in the look and tone of her advertising. There's no doubt about that. Hadley Perry has a voice, and it comes through in the look and tone of all of her advertising and in the experience that you get when you come in the store. All right. But the advertising always makes specific offers. And we could spend a whole webinar, and we will, on offers themselves. But she makes specific offers every time. And she's had enough people come in over and over and over again that now she does have a brand. It's on autopilot. It happened on autopilot because people had come and come again, had a good enough experience that they wanted to come again. They trust her. They see her advertising and they want to open it to see what's in it because they know there's going to be a cool offer. Even if they don't respond to the offer, they don't get off of her lists, because they know there's going to be something in there sooner or later that they're going to want to respond to, and they're going to enjoy the experience of doing business. But she didn't do that by saying, we're great, we're better than the other guys, we've got a terrific experience here, take a look at our groovy logo, and all the principles I've been talking about today, she has used to get the direct response. And as people have come in and had a good experience, that is what has built the brand. Okay. You're not big enough. There's none of us that are big enough. Even Hadley at 10 million a year is not big enough in the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, to be able to afford the branding approach to marketing on any kind of consistent basis. Okay. So it's always got an offer associated with it, and that drives her business. And then over time, by virtue of the fact that she has tons and tons of happy repeat buying customers, she now has a brand and is so trusted in the marketplace that people come over and over, and they refer and they talk about, and there's all the buzz that goes with it and that kind of thing. But it's all based on direct response offers that get people in the door in the first place. Okay. So to wrap it all up, then we've covered the branding myth in the context of the direct response myth. make offers that will take care of your brand stuff. We've talked about reach versus frequency, which is most important. We've talked about the fallacy of frequency. In other words, that you don't have to be there 3, 5, 7, or 13 times to get people to respond to your advertising. We've talked about the keep it simple myth and the attention span myth. The one thing I haven't covered is social media, digital supremacy myth versus more traditional advertising. Guys, you may find this hard to believe, but even with increasing costs, we find that direct mail and email are the most they get the most predictable and high volume of responses for a low cost of acquisition. And most people look at that and go, what? That's so counterintuitive to everything that we've been talked about for the last 2 decades, you know, where everybody has said, hey, social media is the way to go, digital media is the way to go. And I will grant you, email is a form of digital media. But I'm going to share this one more screen with you before we call it a day. And here it is. Okay. This is an event result. And Eric, I don't have Eric's with me, but Eric, we'll talk about yours for just 1 minute in a second. This is.
Can you enlarge that, Jim? It's pretty hard to see.
Let's see what I can do here. Yeah, I can enlarge it. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate that.
Well,
Got it.
now it's off the field. Oh,
Yeah.
there you go.
Okay. All right. So So what we've got here is this was a national rarities event. Okay. Now you guys know national rarities. They come in and they do buying events. So they're buying gold, silver, old stuff, guns, purses, all that kind of stuff, right? So they have a set of ads that they run, whether they're doing an ad for you, Stuart, or Chris, or John, or Eric, whoever it is. They come in, they do the same event, they do the same advertising for everybody, right? So this is what Kevin got in one of his events. Okay, The Advocate is a newspaper. They got 56 responses out of newspaper, which is the number 2 position, but that's to be expected because it's a gold buying thing. It's skewed toward an older audience, okay? But look at this. Postcard mailers, 99 responses, with the exception of the newspaper and social media, okay? It was twice social media's response, better than twice social media response, and everything else it was miles ahead of. 3 times greater even than word of mouth. Okay, which doesn't tell me much about what kind of job they did on word of mouth, but that regardless. But look at that. Postcard mailers was number 1, TV 21, social media 46, in-store handouts 12. 4 for email, which that was shockingly low. Text messaging 1, repeat customers 16, also shockingly low. 33 for word of mouth and 4 for other. Okay. You look at that though, and the social media at 46 came in 3rd place. It's inexpensive to do, but remember that's all of social media. So if they did Facebook, Instagram, I don't know whether they did TikTok or not, whether they did Pinterest. They don't have that kind of a breakout. But if you were to break that all out, it's not very impressive, right? Now, in Eric's case, Eric was doing an anniversary sale, and I don't know if you have the numbers in front of you, Eric. I don't have the numbers that you did on them, but once again, direct mail and email were the top performers. There were 14 different media that were identified in Eric's. And who did this? This was a Wilkerson, right, Eric?
Yes.
Okay, so everybody knows who Wilkerson is. They do many of these either going out of business sales, retirement sales, or big anniversary sales. It lasts for several weeks. They bring in their own stuff and sell it. They project how much they're going to do, all that kind of stuff. and they've got set ads. They're running the same ads in every market, right? We actually got them to modify your direct mail and email a little bit, if I remember right. Didn't we, Eric? And which performed best? Well, what do you know? It was the direct mail and email that performed best, right? But where do you think the social media came in? Facebook and Instagram primarily. 11 and 14 respectively. Of the 14 different media that were used, with powerful offers that were proven across the whole country, with advertising that was used across the whole country, where did the social media come in? Facebook 11, Instagram 14. Okay. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't use those media. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you're gonna throw all of your eggs into that basket, if you're gonna make that your primary way to sell, you're probably losing more than you want to or would expect to. Okay. And you ought to think in terms of direct mail and email first, and then use the other media to kind of augment, right? This has been what we have found over and over and over again. There are a couple other media that work quite well. Telemarketing works very well, whether you have your staff do it. Typically what we do is we have your staff take the very best clients, if you can count on your staff to actually make the phone calls, and then have a third-party firm make phone calls to the next 1,500 to 2,000 top customers or something. That works really well. Getting them to make phone calls and set appointments. Part of the secret sauce, as Hadley would say. Okay, that's a powerful medium to use. Text messaging did not perform well on the Rarities event, but has performed fairly well on some others, and it can be very inexpensive to do. So I hope, if you have any questions, we're a little bit over time, but if you have any questions, open up your unmute yourself and ask away, and we'll take a couple of questions if you've got them and go from there. Has this been helpful?
Yes.
John, what do you think?
Yeah.
Okay. Stuart, is this useful for you? I don't know if Chris is still on or not, but I'd like to know if you guys found this useful. It's drinking from a fire hose, right? We covered a lot of stuff in short order. But for you who are not members of JEMS and joined us as guests today, you might want to take a look at JEMS. You can find that at gemsinstitute.org, and you'll see the kinds of things that we offer. But basically, we're offering a one-stop shop for management of your management training and resources for your stores. JEMS is Jewelers Excellence Management Solutions, JEMS Institute. We have libraries of this kind of information. We do 2 webinars a month, one on marketing, one on management. And we have turnkey marketing programs. I showed you one of them in the beginning for the Extravaganza event. We help you do custom stuff. If you need graphic design work, we take care of all the agency type services at unbelievably low prices. Design of a billboard, $37. Design of a postcard, $75. You know, those kinds of things. Just and the quality of the design work and stuff. We can do scripts for radio and television. We can get production handled for you. We take care of your printing and mailing needs all in one stop shop. So those are the kinds of things that we can do for you. We have about 30, somewhere between 36 and 40 turnkey programs for a variety of promotions, whether they're your own store promotions or whether they're Christmas related, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, birthdays, anniversaries, other kinds of events, just a whole bunch of turnkey things that you provide your logo and specific information about offers. We plug and play, and it's fast and it's easy and those kinds of things. So if you want more information on that, shoot me an email at mail@ascendmarketing.com or put it in the chat before we're done, and we'll reach out to you, and we'll even give you a free marketing fitness checkup worth $397. And we'll just do that with our compliments out of respect for your interest in our program. So anything else, Paul, that we ought to talk about, or Royce or Eric?
Not for now. We're out of time.
Okay.
Yeah, all good.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Sorry we went a little bit over, but again, hope you got useful information out of this. And if you have questions, we're happy to answer them. And we're actually more than willing to help you implement everything that we talked about today. Thanks, everybody. And 2 weeks is our management workshop or webinar, and we'll be looking forward to that as well. Take care, everybody. Bye.